Good luck with that.
That's what we say. And then it's Andy Dalton, 400 yards. All right, let's get it. Thursday night football. Not exactly a banner matchup. Al Michaels will not be happy on the call tonight. Falcons, Panthers, what we're looking at. Bad weather in the mix as well. Pete McCarthy, Geoff Ulrich with you here on the Stokastic DFS channel. Geoff, come on. Maybe we get 60 points here. A shocker. What do you think? Something fun?
No, I don't think so. I think it's going to be the exact opposite of the first two meetings between the first meeting between these two teams. Yeah, I mean, I think this one's going to play out exactly how it's drawn up. Lots of running, a slow pace, and Carolina probably doing their best to not score so that they can, get a leg up in the tankathon that is happening here in the second half of the year.
I don't know who should be tanking in the NFC South. They're all in the mix.
That's true too, right? That's true too. Atlanta's definitely not tanking. They've got that kind of, that mentality of going after it. Probably should have won last week, but I mean, they're also not that good, right? Like to your point. I mean, they
were supposed to be tanking.
Yeah. Maybe could also be tanking. Right. So I don't know. It's a closer point spread, not a huge total. I do feel like Atlanta's just going to be able to run the ball a lot, probably not take many pass attempts. If you heard my comment before, the Mariota passing prop is kind of just looking obscene to even think about going over on. So that's the kind of game I'm expecting, but we'll see. I mean, certainly no one was expecting 60 plus points in the last time, and it happened. So I guess lightning could strike twice.
No, it's wild. And just looking at that game, 37-34, went to overtime. You had the big hit for PJ Walker to DJ Moore. We start going into the game logs for all these players and what these teams have done this year. That game was just such an outlier. And so if you're going to play this matchup that just happened a week and a half ago, it doesn't seem to have much bearing on what will be occurring tonight. Again, weather's going to be a mix, different kind of field there in Carolina. So we'll be breaking this down for the next little bit. For No House Advantage, you're looking at their pick'em contest there. Usually a lot of overlays. Keep an eye on that tonight. As we bring you in here, give us a like, subscribe. We're on YouTube, so I'm contractually obligated to say that, as you know by now. We got lots happening here on the channel, and once you do subscribe, you hit that little notification button. You get alerts when our shows go live, and we're also available in podcast form. You can bring us on the go. You go out for a little jog. You want to keep up with what's going on, boom. You can hear most of our content on your platform of choice. So tonight, No House Advantage, the Pick'em contest. You got a $15 entry, $10,000 to first place. You can also play a $5 entry, which will give $1,000 to first place. Usually end up seeing these chopped quite a bit, but you can get unique, be a little contrarian and take Marcus Mariota over on those passing yards and get that outlier game. And boom, maybe you're all by yourself there. But I guess the weather is really significant for this game, even if it's not two teams we expect to pass a lot, but it just kind of further knocks everything down, not only the quarterbacks, but these receiver numbers as well, Geoff.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Last time, I mean, I've heard fluctuating reports, but there's some rain in the forecast for sure. There's, winds of at least 10 miles per hour, potentially bigger. So, it's not going to help the passing games. We don't have ideal conditions where, scrambling a little bit and then being able to just kind of flow one downfield. It's going to be, if you're outside the pocket, you're probably not thinking about trying to launch it 30 yards, probably tuck and run situation. So again, probably favors Atlanta because they're going to run the ball anyways. And it probably favors, like a very slow offensive game. So something to factor in as well. Yeah, like to your point, I mean, you can take big contrarian lines here if you want, but I don't know if this is necessarily a spot to think about being too contrarian. We'll pick our spots, though. We'll find some stuff. Yeah. I mean, we'll go through this. And, again, like if we start off with Marcus Mariota, I mean, 216.5. Again, like we have them projected for, we actually have them projected for probably bigger than like a lot of the, just around the industry would probably have them, to be honest. But it's still, like an easy under here, under 190 yards easy on our site. And he's getting 216. So, It's a spot where I think you just take the under, and you look elsewhere. You put it high up in your lineup, and then you build around it.
Now, he's only surpassed this number of 216.5 twice all season long. That's now 9 games for Marcus Mariota. I don't know if it's even worthwhile to get cute with the passing touchdowns. It's a slightly lesser chance on that under. You also have the interceptions that you could play. I usually like playing the interceptions if you see it being a one-sided game and one of the quarterbacks have to throw the whole second half. Sometimes you get lucky at the end of the game and you could pick up that interception, but I don't really get that feel with this game, certainly not on Mariota's end. So yes, I think 1,000% you go under on the passing yardage there. And is there even room to get cute and be contrarian? And if I'm trying to find something a little different, and remember, we're not just trying to go 7 of 7 in these props here. We can get all 7 and then split it 100 ways and win $80, or we could try to get up there by ourselves and try to find a unique way. If I had to pick one of these passing games to be over, I guess it would be Atlanta's, certainly not Carolina's.
Yeah,
in my opinion.
I'm kind of with you. I mean, like the game script for Philip Walker probably going to be a little bit more inclined for him. I mean, Atlanta runs the ball when they're behind as well. So like if I'm picking and choosing things to kind of go over on Atlanta, like I'm probably just looking at their receiver props, probably like a Drake London over makes sense. I mean, we have it pretty much projected as neutral. I don't hate that. Even their third wide receiver, Zacchaeus, he's only got a 27.5 receiving prop. We've seen him pop up. You can definitely mix and match in there. I think the other thing you can do with Atlanta is just take a hyper approach, like where you're taking the under, you're taking the over on Cordell Patterson, and maybe you're taking like the under on Kyle Pitts too. I think people will maybe go, they'll take the under on Mariota, but will they really press everything and go like under on everything? I don't know if they'll do that. Like go under on the passing touchdowns and just build around that. Like take 4 or 5 Atlanta unders here. And really just look for like the rushing. We don't have a rushing yardage prop on Mariota. I'd say throw that in, but we do have, like I said, the Patterson over on the rush. We could, and then again, you can also play that heavy rush style by mixing in like a Pitts under or something as well. So I think that's probably like the way to really like kind of press your advantage on the Atlanta side. Just taking that harsh stance where this is going to be all rushing. Probably might see like 12 pass attempts, 15 pass attempts, and they're just going to be not enough for maybe like one wide receiver to go over his number or something, and that's it. So that's kind of the way I'm looking at Atlanta. I'm really not interested. I don't think they're going to need to pass much, and they don't want to pass, and the conditions aren't. So if I'm being honest, if I'm taking like a lineup to go over on some bigger passing props, I'd probably go Walker and just like, maybe Terrace Marshall, who does actually have like a pretty low prop.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the things, if you can go under on both quarterbacks and you don't necessarily have to go under on all the receivers because some of these numbers on the receivers are just so low. You mentioned Marshall, 31.5 receiving yards. Zacchaeus, 27.5 receiving yards. Even Drake London to some degree, 48.5. It's kind of doable with Mariota's under at least. DJ Moore, I mean, you can't really get under on Walker and over on Moore unless, you think Baker Mayfield's coming in and playing the second half again, which, I think has to be a consideration, right? With everything that we're looking at with Carolina, how much wiggle room does PJ Walker get in this spot after being benched at halftime just last week?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and again, like to that point that I made about Atlanta, I mean, you can push that even further by saying I'm taking unders on everyone. Like I'll take the unders on the passing game for Mariota, for Pitts, and take the under on Philip Walker too. I think that people, again, like people will mix in unders, but will they really go like 5 or 6 unders? I don't know. I think people kind of just like they want to play some overs. So when you're making lineups, like absolutely, I mean, throw in Walker under passing touchdowns, with Mariota under. Again, like there's only so many props available to us. Like if we had like a Tyler Algier prop or a Mariota rushing prop, I'd be telling you, yes, probably to take the over on all 3 of Mariota, Patterson, and Algier rushing. That's how much that's just what the Atlanta offense is. That's pretty much their game plan right now. And it's really not a bad matchup for them. So, and then on the flip side, like you still have I mean, like Walker at 195, 194.5. I mean, it's not, it sounds small, but it's really not that small for him. I mean, the guy had like 17 pass yards last week. So there's a lot of ways you can go about this, but I think that like to your point, like there's going to be some chalky props, but if you mix all the unders together, I think that's where you're kind of going to get you uniqueness. And that's going to be the most effective, because there's just not many scenarios tonight where, you know, these passing offenses are really going to get off. And I'm talking about both sides too, not just Atlanta. So.
And that's where the weather, I think, you know, is important, because these props are up earlier this week. And so you don't necessarily have the weather forecast. And this is the remnants of a tropical storm. So, you know, you're not really putting that together when you put these numbers out there. We've talked about it on the show, and no house advantage, especially with these pick'em contests. Typically, they have some inflated numbers, larger numbers that you're going to see elsewhere. And now we're throwing bad weather into the mix in Charlotte. It does bring about a combination that you really can easily get under all of these things. And look, at both, just looking at Atlanta's offense and Carolina's defense. And now I always like looking at DVOA on Football Outsiders, but I'll put it this way. The Atlanta defense is ranked 28th. Carolina's offense, 31st. Carolina's defense, 30th. Like they're bottom of the league in 3 of the 4 units here. The only unit that's above average is the Falcons offense. And actually the 4th ranked rushing attack, but it's so hard to get to it here because the only rushing prop we have is Cordero Patterson. We don't have anything with Mariota. We don't have the other running back, as you mentioned. And, you know, you got to get 60 yards out of Patterson, which is a number he's only reached 3 times this year.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good point. Like, I mean, these secondaries are just as bad as like the offenses too. So, I mean, that's pretty much how we got there with the other game. But at the same time, this is the second time we're seeing these defenses are seeing the offenses. And typically, you know, sometimes we'll get that slower game the second time 2 division rivals meet. That's another factor in here that, like, again, I don't think that many people are talking about, but it's just another reason, I think, to just fade everything. So, yeah, I mean, you can certainly go, if you make like an over passing attack with starting with the Mariota over. I mean, you're going to have a unique lineup right off the bat. There's no doubt. But I just don't really know where to go. I mean, like the Drake London over is fine. I would actually play that in any kind of lineup to give yourself a little bit of originality. But I mean, do you really feel good about Kyle Pitts over 52.5? Like that's a massive total, 4.5 receptions. So it's even hard to like correlate things like Mariota's passing yards in this game. And yeah, and like I said, the defense is here getting a second look. I think that they'll probably be a lot better. Not a lot better because they're not very good, but a little better. Yeah,
a little better. And we'll throw some of the receivers out at you because we got more guys than just the big names to talk about here that we could potentially go over on. But if you're not familiar with No House Advantage and what they're all about, we're talking about the pick'em contest right now. You can hit up to 6 figures at these contests. Tonight, it's going to be 10 grand for the top prize. Download the app, choose a contest, you select your props, and then hopefully you climb up the leaderboard. If you take under on everything, you just stay atop the leaderboard the whole game. But you could play all the different sports, NBA, NHL, golf, you name it. And be sure to check out our first match deposit bonus, or their first match deposit bonus. It's $50. You click the link below. They'll give you another $50 to play with, and you could use that to play in these pick'em contests as we're discussing right now. You could also play Against the House. So we'll talk about some of those props a little bit later in the show. You hit 5 of 5, you can go for 21 times your money. How about some of these low-level receivers? Sometimes, it's like filler guys that become part of the equation and are sometimes the easiest to go under on in that top spot, right? The Titans receiver, I don't even remember what his name was, but that was kind of the free spot on Sunday night for that Chiefs-Titans game. We got Kadarius Hodge of the Falcons, 15.5 receiving yards. We have that with our projections, which are free at stokastic.com, a 90% under. And if that's enough, he's 95% to be under on the receptions at 1.5. You also have Laviska Shenault Jr. on the other side for Carolina. He had like one big game earlier this season, mostly a special teams guy, played 3 snaps last week. He's on the board. So, these are guys you can get cute with, you can go under, and I'm sure most lives are going to have these unders, but there are some ways to get different with the receivers because weird stuff happens at that position.
Well, yeah. And I mean, like these are two teams that do weird things. Like, I mean, Kadarius Hodge has shown up with like I think he showed up like 5 catches one week for Atlanta. So like they don't have a game plan where it's just like, oh yeah, we're just feeding one guy in the receiving game. They just they seem to like game plan for different receivers every week, which is really weird when you have Kyle Pitts and Drake London on your team. So again, I mean, they're like they're not very helpful to fantasy owners. Certainly Kyle Pitts been a big disappointment. There's some rumblings I'll throw out for this game that like finally the coaches are kind of admitting we need to get Kyle Pitts the ball. So it's a bit of an interesting spot for him, I admit. If this was a little bit better game environment, I would probably be very interested in that, but you could still look to it, I guess. You hope he gets there. Maybe he does get 7 or 8 targets. Finally, they use him out the bat. It's just big totals. Like if we had a 3.5 or like a 40-yard prop on Pitts, be a lot more interesting. It's just really big. So you'll definitely get a lot of leverage on the field off those pit props, but man, he could easily catch four balls for 40 yards here. Have a decent game for him this year and go under, right? So I just wanted to throw that out there. But you're right. I mean, like we have these weird props, Chenault, Hodge.
That's where you get different. If you're going to go under everybody, that's what I see on the board.
Well, and I agree. Like, I think a lot of people will look at those and be like, oh, well, Laviska Shenault can catch 2 passes. Like, that's easy, right? But he hasn't, to your point, like he hasn't been playing. And then, I mean, Kadarius Hodge, I mean, my God, like, again, he could get 0 targets in this game. No one here would be shocked. So, yeah, you could definitely throw those guys in for unders.
I don't know about you give your expertise here, but if I'm going to take a shot, I'm taking a shot on the yardage being up rather than actually have 2 plays called for these guys. Right. I mean, that's where you hope you get the trick play or whatever, and they're up the field and can make something happen. Yeah.
I mean, Hodge is, again, leaning off our projections, I would feel better about Chenault. Kadarius Hodge I think Mariota, like I said, there may be 15 passes on that side, and he is fighting for targets with, like, dear God, there's 5 people in front of him fighting for targets. Maybe the coaching staff game plan something for him, but like Chenault, he's got a way weaker wide receiver crew. There's no McCaffrey there. So Chenault is really the guy who should be taking over. And yeah, I don't mind your call at all. I mean, I agree. He's the type of guy who can get 1 target for 20 yards. They dial up a nice screen and you're there. So Chenault is definitely the harder over target. He would be the over target for me. Hodge is just, I think, a guy you can take an under on. Again, the field may just choose to leave him out because most people don't even know who he is, or maybe even go over on him because the things are so small. But I have lots of scenarios tonight where he doesn't get targeted. So yeah, some weird props up, and even Olamide Zacchaeus down there. I mean, like, that's not a name I was even expecting to see, right? So wish we had more rushing props for Atlanta up. We don't. We got to take some shots with these variable wide receivers tonight. So it's very much, you're going to know right off the bat. Either you're like, oh my God, I should have taken the over on everyone, or you're like, this is perfect because this game is so ugly that nobody's going over. So, that's what happens when you have to take a lot of receiving and passing props, and you can't necessarily rely on the rush. But yeah, it's that kind of night. We got to go, wide receiver 3-4 deep here.
Yeah, I mean, and it's relatively surprising. I guess this is the way it's kind of been for No House Advantage to focus on the passing games typically. But yeah, you get to a team that wants to run the ball like Atlanta, a lot of different guys that could do it, and we can't play a lot of it. So you kind of have hidden yardage when you are sorting it out. If you're only looking at it through the lens of what's available to you in these pick'em contests at No House Advantage. Let's look at the running backs. Cordero Patterson. We expect him to be busy tonight, but he does have a lot of competition in the backfield, as you've talked about. 59.5 rushing yards might not seem like a monster number being the line. We project him over that. He's been over that in 3 out of 5 games. He's had at least 38 rushing yards in the 5 games that he has played. So he's been the guy. I would kind of like a touchdown line on Cordero Patterson with how busy he's been finding the end zone, but we don't have that either. How do you feel about Patterson at getting to 60 rushing yards?
Yeah, it's a big line, but we definitely are bullish. If you look at, again, like Mariota's passing yardage or rushing yardage and Tyler Algier, they're big projections for these guys this week, including Patterson. So Yeah, I mean, the only thing you worry about Patterson is, he is giving up carries middle of the field to Algier, who's been very productive. So I kind of agree with you. I'd almost rather take him to score a touchdown this week than over yardage. I think that's like one place where you could potentially get contrarian and go under on the yardage with Patterson. He is dealing with, he's got competition. Like Mariota could rush for 70 yards here.
Mm-hmm.
And there just may not be enough yardage overall for Patterson to get there. If he just ends up getting chewed up early in the downs and then Mariota gets the big plays, or Algier comes in, steals a couple big plays, this may not be enough attempts. So again, not my favorite. We haven't projected for over, but not my favorite target necessarily. Like I'd rather go under on the passing games here than necessarily build around a Patterson over. I think that's actually a good one to be a little bit contrarian around, or maybe even leave out.
Mm-hmm.
Just because the fact we're only getting one Atlanta rushing prop and everyone knows Atlanta wants to rush the ball, everyone's going to go, okay, well, I got to play the over on the one prop. But there's legitimately 3 players here we need to worry about for rushing, and 2 of them aren't on the board. So I actually think it's a very good one to fade. It's not necessarily that I don't think Atlanta's going to rush the ball. There's just a lot of different ways they can do that. So yeah, couple different ways to play that one. Again, you can work it into like a stack with the Mariota under, but I also think that you can fade it. And that's where I would actually consider like really being contrarian on being over the field on the under there with Patterson.
It's where the strategy gets interesting, right? When you're playing against other people and you have this confidence pool, 7 points for your top pick all the way down to 1. So you could, go under on 1 point for Patterson, or like you said, just leave him off the board, put something else in there, and you hope that everyone else gets knocked out and you're still standing there and it doesn't kill you if it goes over, as long as you hit whatever you put in that place. So a couple different ways to play it. Carolina, they like to run the ball. No Christian McCaffrey any longer. Deontay Foreman has done a nice job. Look, pretty high line here at 64.5, but he's been over this number in 2 out of 3 of his starts without McCaffrey in the mix. Actually ran for 118 yards in Atlanta a couple of weeks back. Can't say I love it, but there should be some opportunity for him as long as they're not down, 4 touchdowns at the half like they were last week.
Yeah, and the other thing with Foreman, it's kind of the opposite scenario. Like Walker actually doesn't run that much, but he has the ability to run, but he just hasn't taken off very much in the NFL for whatever reason. I don't really know why. Thought that would have been more of a thing, but Foreman is basically the lead back. Like he doesn't have a rushing quarterback. He's still on a team where, like they don't want Philip Walker to drop back a million times. They love it if Foreman got going early and they could just ride him and they get a small lead. So. And, even when they're down, I think they're going to be semi-conservative. This is a team who, we were talking about before. Yeah, like are they really that motivated to win games? They may just run out the clock with Foreman even when they're behind. So I think just like the Cordero Patterson under has some really interesting like game strategy involved in it, so does the Foreman over. 64.5, bigger than we're seeing, I think, from what I've seen in a couple places. It's projected as an under play. You could certainly play it to the under. You take Patterson over on the other side, and those two correlate nicely with the game odds. But these are, again, we're 2 bad teams. Like there's no reason why Foreman can't come out. They get a 3-point lead and they just ride Foreman for most of the game. And then, it's an ugly, sloppy game, and maybe Mariota saves the Falcons at the end or something. But I think Foreman has, the Patterson Foreman props are, if Patterson has a bigger projection, but it's not like the hugest difference in the world. And we're still just talking about two bad offenses where there's so many variables that you kind of got to take the projections with what they are for these teams and just realize that like there's a lot of different things that can happen when you get 2 bad offenses involved like this. So,
well, this Carolina offense, I think, is pretty difficult to predict because they've changed their quarterback in recent weeks. They could change their quarterback again tonight. They've changed their head coach in recent weeks. They've changed, I believe, they have a new offensive coordinator. I think they do. I know the defensive coordinator is out, but McCaffrey's gone. There's been a lot of changes for this team over the past few weeks, and we saw how ugly it can get last week. One tool that's great for, as you mentioned, what's going on elsewhere in the industry or at sports books, use Odds Shopper, and then it'll enable you to, you could throw in PJ Walker passing yardage line. You can see what the lines are elsewhere and get an idea of what the sports books are looking at, where the juice might be on some of these props. And that can help you, whether you're building a lineup here to play versus other people, or if you want to play versus the house. And I'll throw a couple of versus the house props at you, which are quite different, right? We were talking about Marcus Mariota. Was it 217 in the pick'em contest or whatever it is for his passing yardage? It's 157.5 if you want to play against the house. I mean, totally different ball game there, right? PJ Walker drops a little bit, though not as dramatically, and you get Mariota rushing yardage on there. How about I hit you with that? 30.5 rushing yards for Marcus Mariota in this game if you wanted to play versus the house.
I mean, I like that one a lot. The Mariota over rushing. Again, you look what Carolina's done, just or how they defended the last little bit. I mean, it's not been very good. It's kind of like you said, a little bit of a different team. I think there's a lot of opportunity here for Mariota, just going to be to take off and rush. And I think Atlanta will probably scheme that in as well. They know it's a rainy game. They know it's a short week. I mean, just doing some easy stuff like getting Mariota involved as a rusher early makes sense. It's really not a big prop for Mariota to hit when you look at what he's averaged as well. So we have him projected for, I'm talking about Mariota, like projected for, a pretty hefty running game. And I like that over. I mean, like I said, I like that over more than the Patterson one tonight.
I got a question for you, and I don't know if you know the answer. I haven't watched a whole lot of Falcons games so far this year. Mariota, does he get his rushing yards typically on broken passing plays where he's scrambling, or is it more designed runs? Because you would think tonight, if Atlanta is playing from ahead, as we might expect, you would need more of those designed runs rather than dropbacks where he's making something happen.
So I haven't looked at the percentage since like about week 4, but I know that at the start of the year, like Mariota was like, he was getting designed runs. Like there was design run for him. And just looking at the past logs, I mean, he doesn't and I have watched the Atlanta games, so I'm just going by memory as well. But, he typically has had a couple big scrambles, but there's also, an equal amount of, RPOs where he tucks it and it's just like, he's going on a design scheme. So he's definitely one of those quarterbacks who gets runs schemed up for him. Again, I don't have the exact percentages up there if he's top of the league, but from what I recall start of the year, I mean, that was one of the appealing things where he may even be a break, kind of like where Justin Fields is now. Now, I don't think Mariota is going to progress to where Fields is, but he's been steady. He's been steadier with the rush volume. And, from what I've seen, he's still getting the design run plays.
So I can help you out playing versus the house. Look at the over on the rushing yardage, and regardless whether Atlanta is ahead big or not, you should see Mariota getting some opportunities there to run the football. So going back to the pickup contest, I mean, just big picture here. Again, kind of some of the options correlations that we talked about. Fade the pass, fade everything. Just nobody does anything in this game, and the punters are over on everything, I guess. Yeah. And maybe you could slide in a receiver or two to pop off. Somebody's going to have an over. One of these receivers is going to get over somewhere along the way. It's just the nature of it. It's just we're not expecting Patrick Mahomes bringing everybody over with him on Sunday.
We didn't talk about these guys a ton, but I mean, like Drake London and Terrace Marshall Jr., kind of two guys I'd be targeting tonight. I think London just will probably, I mean, it's not a good secondary against the receivers. I think London could easily go off for 4 or 5 catches. And I think Terrace Marshall, just with the way he's looked with PJ Walker, that connections looked good. He's kind of an all-around receiver. Again, Walker a little bit limited what he can do. I think Marshall probably gets there both on receptions and yards. That's like the one receiver that I'm kind of bullish on. So yeah, you could take overs on both those. Like I said, I like the contrarian move of going kind of like doing the reverse on the running backs as well. I just think Patterson has so much competition for carries that the under there is actually has a fairly good chance of hitting. And then Foreman, exact opposite situation. So those are the kind of moves I would be looking to make sliding into my lineups. But yeah, this is one where I think just piling into the unders and playing for a really slow paced game on both sides makes the most sense.
Thursday night football, baby. Gotta love it. Panthers first place Falcons going
First
at it.
place Falcons. My
So
God.
we'll have that in the rain to watch later. Hey, if you're an NBA fan, you could check out No House Advantage, and we got Thursday night NBA info coming your way with Aton and Gundacker next. We'll also get back to the NFL Showdown live before lock at 7 o'clock Eastern here on the Stokastic DFS channel. Jeff, a pleasure as always. I'm Petey Mac. Have a good one, guys.